Hi, I'm Kelly Hushin, and I am here with Don Ulsch from 0 Point Risk. And we actually are here in our New York offices talking today, but Don was kind enough to grace us in Atlanta with your presence at ProcureCon, and you spoke there. And we just wanted to invite him back to talk a little bit more about some of the things that he spoke about at the conference. So thank you so much for coming in today, Don. And I just wanted to kind of get started with a little bit of your background and what your firm is all about and what you do.
Sure. Great to be here, Kelly.
Yes, thank you.
My firm focuses on managing regulatory, legal, financial, and reputation risk factors. It covers a very broad range of issues that include technology, but not exclusively limited to technology. So we try and help companies manage their risk. We conduct research, we consult and advise in financial services, healthcare, really a very wide range of industry sectors, both domestically and internationally.
Great. So now I know that you have been sort of a friend to some of our other events that we do here at Worldwide Business Research, but our producer for ProcureCon, Karina Cool, she found you and she wanted you to come and speak at our procurement event to talk to procurement executives about some new innovations in technology, one of them being this whole idea of the cloud and cloud computing. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that and what that is, just so we can kind of get our heads around it, because I think a lot of us don't really understand it necessarily.
Sure.
And then maybe some of the risks involved with getting into that environment.
Sure. Well, cloud computing, Kelly, is really the ability and the act of acquiring external services to conduct the business that you might normally conduct with your own internal IT infrastructure. So the idea is that you can more aggressively and more economically pursue improved technologies across a wide range of technologies and vendors at a reduced cost. So you're not really buying the IT infrastructure that you would need to grow your organization. You're simply acquiring the services of a company that is providing that cloud computing service to you. And there are different types of clouds. There are public clouds, which are being developed by federal and even state governments, and other countries are developing cloud capabilities. And then there are private clouds, which companies may develop on their own. Then there are hybrid clouds, which really are a combination of private and public clouds. So it's a very rapidly growing industry. There are lots of variables involved, and where there is rapid growth, where there's technology and innovation, there is risk. Technology is sort of the leading indicator of change and innovation. And that's a good thing. I don't want anybody to think that this isn't a good thing, right? But it does provide some interesting new challenges and some risks that we need to look at. So the impact of a risk event is a lagging indicator of that innovation and change, because there may be things lurking in any environment that you don't understand. It may not have been a condition present prior to your incorporating a cloud capability in your organization. So you may not know what's happening. So the whole point that we make at 0 Point Risk Research is that you need to understand what the different risks are and be able to manage those risks, be able to forecast what those impacts may be, so that you can more effectively manage that risk in accordance with your own corporate governance goals and initiatives.
Right. So now procurement executives, which is who we're talking to today, obviously, they may very well not know much about these environments because it's so new. And it's obviously their job to go out there and to speak to third parties and to source these kinds of things. So what kind of advice would you give to, let's say, a chief procurement officer who is charged with researching and understanding the opportunities out there and actually going and purchasing and forging a partnership with a cloud environment? How do you start? what are some of the things you want to make sure you know, and how do you decide who to go with?
Well, nobody's going to engage in cloud computing services without a contractual relationship with that provider. So I think you start by looking at what are the attributes, what are the different issues that you might be able to identify in what would typically be a service level agreement. Mm-hmm. Now, most service level agreements focus on the performance of the company. What are they going to do for you? What are the range of services that they're going to provide for you? Mm-hmm. And then there's a legal aspect, and that is, what if they don't provide that service? What are the remedies that might be available to you? And those might be highly variable. Mm-hmm. Well, I firmly believe that that's not enough, right? We have a 7-point program that we think is much more effective, not just for clouds, but it certainly applies to clouds, because a cloud is what? A cloud is a third-party service. And if you believe the research that's out there that we've done and others have done, somewhere between 50 and 80% of security breaches which lead to a risk event are going to originate with that third party who may have physical, system, or data level access to your company. So the 7 points that I would advise that chief procurement officer to look for with a team would include the following.
Okay.
Security.
Mm-hmm.
How are they securing the information? Privacy. What management practices is that provider going to ensure that are enforced with regards to privacy? And it may be privacy not only, it depends on what you're procuring. It might be the privacy of information that's regulated, like personal information. It might be protecting intellectual property, trade secrets, medical device manufacturing plans. It could be really anything. But how are they treating it from a security point of view? How are they embedding privacy management practices? And under many of the emerging state and federal regulations, if it involves regulated information, you have to be able to forecast threat and risk analysis. You have to understand what are the potential threats out there and what kind of risk do they pose to your organization. We then look at the issue of compliance. Mm-hmm. What is it that they need to do to comply with your agreement with them? But there's also another dimension of compliance. And are they currently complying with any industry or government, state, federal, foreign country compliance requirements? What are they currently doing? That'll be a key indicator as to how secure they may or may not be. Because companies that have to provide a basic, mandatory, regulatory minimum of security and privacy may be more secure than ones that don't have to make that demonstration. Mm-hmm. Then there's the issue of enforcement. If they fail to do that, what are your enforcement rights? Mm-hmm. Do you get to walk away from the contract? Do you get to suspend payment? Mm-hmm. If they don't properly protect the security, or if they don't properly protect the information by providing security, by doing that threat forecast, by managing the privacy of that information, by meeting certain compliance requirements, what right does that give you? Do you have the right to say, you failed to do X, so therefore we're not going to do Y?
Right.
Then there's the issue of internal audit. What is that company doing, that service provider? What are they doing to manage the internal audit process? Is internal audit picking up on any of these issues that would be of concern? And you, as the principal company, hiring that company that's providing the service to you, what access rights do you have to their findings? Right. Now, these are all negotiable things. Some cloud computer providers or other third-party service providers may not want to give you complete and unfettered access. Again, it's negotiable. So what is the amount of information you're going to have access to? When do you have access to it? Within what time frame from the point of request are they obligated to provide that information to you. And then the seventh area is increasingly important around foreign corrupt practices management. There are many emerging nations which lack the appropriate control frameworks to manage risk.
Right.
And there's a lot of money being infused into technologies that will lead to the development of companies in a lot of countries that may, in fact, increase risk in the following way. Many organizations worldwide, including the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations Industrial Development Office, the World Bank, individual countries are infusing money in emerging markets. And they're infusing these monies to invest in technologies to create companies to provide services.
Right.
Some of these investments will end up funding ISPs, data centers, companies that are providing services that major cloud computing services in the United States and elsewhere may end up working with in some form of a partnership or strategic alliance. So let's say that you have information in the cloud that is important to you. You're part of the global supply chain. What demonstration of proof is necessary to you that the information that you're providing into that cloud is going to be secure to the extent that it needs to be secure to meet your governance obligations? So what does that really mean? What if your principal cloud provider contracts with an overseas cloud service provider that may not have good controls in place, that may not have good security? The due diligence that you may have done to see that the domestic cloud provider is doing the right things in terms of managing information risk. But do they do that when they contract with another company, when they outsource?
Right.
So that's part of the complicated process. So when we talk about regulated information, which is only a piece of the picture, the obligation is on you, the company, to make sure that it's protected. You cannot transfer that obligation to a third party.
Right. Now, the truth is all of this might seem a little intimidating to someone who doesn't know much about this and who maybe hasn't had to manage something like this before. So if I'm a procurement person and I am considering using some third-party cloud services, how do I convince, let's say, upper management that A, that the risk is not too great and that I'm going to be able to somehow mitigate the risk despite all of the things you just said, and B, that maybe this is just a phenomenon of when we went and started doing internet banking, people were all scared at first and we're not sure about the risk involved and whether this was safe. How can I convince them that I will handle that and control that, and B, that we should do this because it's the future?
Well, I do believe that cloud computing is going to grow significantly given the economies of scale, the state of the economy of many companies in many countries. There's every reason for it to be the next big thing. Every next big thing carries with it some risk. Doesn't matter what it is in life, it is going to be the next big thing. There's risk in everything. We can't stop doing business, but I think we do have a responsibility to achieve the goals associated with our corporate governance as a part of managing risk. And I will tell you that in the global supply chain, as the result of economic espionage and technology acquisition by foreign governments, by terrorist organizations, by organized crime, there are pirated parts, there are chips that are not reliable, there are products and devices that may be suspect, and you don't really know who you're hiring. When that data leaves your perimeter, which it does all of the time now, we don't know where that data is going all of the time, and we need to know. And if it goes to a third party that outsources a third party, who are the people that are being hired there to manage that information? What sort of integrity programs do they have in place? How do they know that the person that's being hired isn't actually a terrorist? And that, in my last book, Threat, Managing Risk on a Hostile World, I write about an Al-Qaeda affiliated terrorist who went to work for an outsourcing company that had contracts with Boeing and Airbus Industries. And that's a frightening thing when you're flying 40,000 feet in the air. So this does happen. We don't hear about it every day, but there's risk. But you know what? Part of business is not avoiding risk and the impact of risk. It's trying to manage it.
Right.
So cloud computing is here. It's not going away, but we do need to be cognizant of the fact that it does present a certain set of risks, and we need to manage those as part of sound corporate governance.
Right. Well, a lot for procurement teams and procurement executives to learn and to think about when you're entering the cloud computing space, but still a very promising new development, and like you said, perhaps the next big thing. So we thank you so much for joining us today and just talking a little bit about that. And for all of you procurement executives out there, if you need some advice on managing risk when you are looking into the cloud space, I'm sure that Don would be happy to help you out.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Don.
Thank you.